Before we go any further, if you're drawn to stories buried in darkness, where truth is dangerous and silence can get you killed, make sure you're subscribed, hit like, and drop a comment. Because once you step inside this story, there's no turning back. Inside prison kitchens. Inmate meals exposed. The stainless steel floor of the prison kitchen was still wet when guards found the body. Not an inmate, a civilian contractor. Face down beside an industrial freezer, throat bruised, eyes wide as if frozen in his final moment of panic. At first glance, it looked like a heart attack. That was the official line pushed within minutes. But one guard noticed something that didn't belong. A meal tray tucked beneath the man's arm, wrapped carefully in plastic, like evidence someone didn't want found. This was Red Vale Correctional Facility, a maximum security prison known more for riots than recipes. Yet that night, sirens screamed through the yard, floodlights snapped on, and every kitchen worker, inmates and staff alike, were ordered face down on the floor. Whatever had happened here, it wasn't just an accident. It was a breach. And breaches inside prison walls always come with consequences. Detective Mara Hensley arrived before sunrise. She'd worked gang murders, corrupt guard cases, even executions gone wrong, but she'd never been called to investigate a death tied to prison food services. As she stepped into the kitchen, the smell hit her first. Not decay. Chemicals. Industrial-grade disinfectant layered over something sour and metallic. Someone had cleaned this place too well. The victim was identified as Lucas Brandt, a private food supply auditor hired quietly by the state. No press release. No announcement. His job was to review inmate meal production after spiking complaints, food poisoning, unexplained illnesses, even rumors of deliberate contamination. Officially, the reports went nowhere. Unofficially, Brandt had been asking the wrong questions. Mara examined the tray pulled from beneath his body. Grey meat. Watery beans. Bread so dense it could crack a tooth. Standard prison fare, except for one detail. Etched faintly into the underside of the tray was a number. Not an inmate ID. A batch code. When she asked the kitchen supervisor about it, he went pale. Said it was nothing. Old inventory markings. But his hands shook as he spoke, and his eyes kept drifting toward the freezer where Brandt had died. Security footage from that night was missing. Cameras down for maintenance. Inmate workers claimed they heard shouting, then silence. And one man, serving a life sentence and assigned to food prep, slipped Mara a note as he was escorted out. It read, "The food isn't just bad. It's the weapon." And locked inside the freezer, behind pallets of state-approved meals, Mara found something that turned a routine death into a full-scale criminal investigation. One that would put lives at risk on both sides of the bars. The freezer door closed behind Detective Mara Hensley with a dull, metallic thud, sealing her inside a world of cold air and darker secrets. Industrial fans hummed overhead, rattling chains of boxed meals stacked floor to ceiling. At first glance, it looked like standard prison storage, state-approved rations, neatly labeled, logged, and dated. But the farther she walked in, the more wrong it felt. Behind the last row of pallets, hidden from the main aisle, were boxes without labels. No dates. No supplier names. Just plain brown cardboard stamped with the same batch code etched into the tray found beneath Lucas Brandt's body. When the boxes were opened, the contents raised immediate alarms. Meat sealed in plastic that had slightly bloated, a sign of bacterial activity. Powdered ingredients clumped with moisture. Vegetable packs already turning grey-blue despite the freezing temperatures. This food was never meant to be served. Or worse, it was. Mara ordered samples sent out quietly for testing. No paperwork. No digital trail. She'd learned long ago that prisons had their own way of burying problems, and anyone who challenged that system didn't last long. Brandt was proof of that. As word spread through the cell blocks that an investigator was sniffing around the kitchens, tension spiked. Inmates refused meals. Trays came back untouched, stacked like silent protests outside cell doors. Guards were on edge, hands never far from their batons. Everyone knew food was power inside these walls, and someone had been abusing it. One inmate, known only as Carter, agreed to speak after lights out. He'd worked kitchen duty for years, long enough to see patterns others missed. He told Mara about special batches, meals served only during lockdowns or disciplinary sweeps when inmates had no alternatives. Anyone who complained got written up. Anyone who got sick was ignored. "It's cheaper to treat us like we're disposable," Carter said through the bars, his voice low. "Food contracts get cut. Quality drops. People get sick. And nobody on the outside hears about it." But Carter also hinted at something more sinister. Certain inmates, troublemakers, gang leaders, jailhouse lawyers, were the ones who seemed to get the worst meals. The ones who ended up in medical with violent stomach pain, seizures, or infections doctors couldn't explain fast enough. That night, the lab results came back. Elevated bacteria levels. Expired preservatives. Traces of cleaning chemicals not approved for food preparation. Enough to cause serious illness. Enough to kill someone already weak. Before Mara could act, the prison went into emergency lockdown. An inmate had collapsed in his cell after dinner, convulsing, foam at his mouth. The same batch code. The same kitchen. As medics rushed in too late, the message was clear. Whatever killed Lucas Brandt wasn't finished yet, and someone was making sure the truth stayed frozen in place. By morning, the prison felt like it was holding its breath. The emergency lights still glowed along the corridors, bathing everything in a cold blue haze that made even familiar faces look foreign. The second inmate was alive, for now, but barely. Word spread fast, faster than any official announcement ever could. Whatever was happening in the kitchens wasn't an accident. It was a warning. Detective Mara Hensley was ordered to stand down before sunrise. The call came from the Department of Corrections headquarters, not her own precinct. The voice on the line was calm, practiced, and final. The kitchen incident, she was told, was an internal matter. The investigation would be handled through proper administrative channels. Mara had heard that phrase before. It meant the truth was about to disappear. She ignored the order. Instead, she went back to the kitchen logs. The paperwork was pristine, too pristine. Delivery dates lined up perfectly. Temperature checks were always within regulation. Health inspections showed 0 violations for months. But when she cross-referenced the logs with staffing rosters, a crack appeared. Every questionable batch had been prepared during overnight shifts, supervised by the same civilian contractor, Elias Mercer. Mercer wasn't a guard. He wasn't an inmate. He was a cost-efficiency specialist brought in to modernize prison food operations. His job was to cut waste, streamline preparation, and reduce expenses. On paper, he'd saved the state millions. In reality, he'd turned the kitchens into a factory where safety was optional and accountability non-existent. Mara tracked Mercer down in his office, a spotless room tucked far from the cell blocks. He looked more like a corporate consultant than someone overseeing food for thousands of inmates. When confronted, he smiled, tight, controlled, unbothered. "Inmates get sick all the time," he said. "You can't prove it was the food." Mara slid the lab results across the desk. His smile didn't fade. That scared her more than anger would have. Later that afternoon, Carter was found unconscious in the kitchen storage area. Officially, he'd slipped and hit his head. Unofficially, every inmate on the block knew better. He'd talked. And someone had made sure he wouldn't do it again. The prison administration moved fast. Kitchen operations were temporarily suspended. Food deliveries were replaced with sealed emergency rations from an outside vendor. A press release went out, vague and reassuring, insisting there was no ongoing risk. But that night, Mara received a message slipped under her motel door. No name. No return address. Just a single line written in block letters. Check the contracts. Follow the money. She did. The food supplier, the oversight committee, the consulting firm Mercer worked for, they were all connected. Shell companies. Shared board members. A closed loop where complaints vanished and profits grew. Sick inmates were just acceptable losses. As Mara pieced it together, she realized the truth was bigger than one prison. This system wasn't broken. It was working exactly as designed. And if she exposed it, she wouldn't just be fighting a corrupt kitchen. She'd be challenging an entire industry built on silence. The files came together just after midnight. Contracts, invoices, inspection reports, once scattered, now forming a single, damning picture. Detective Mara Hensley sat on the edge of her motel bed, the blue glow of her laptop reflecting off the walls like police lights that never stopped flashing. What she was looking at wasn't negligence. It was design. Food suppliers billing the state for premium ingredients that never reached the prison. Oversight committees signing off on inspections they never conducted. Consultants like Elias Mercer rewarded with bonuses every time costs dropped, no matter how many inmates got sick along the way. San Quentin wasn't an exception. It was a test case. By morning, Mara had sent encrypted copies of everything to a federal journalist known for exposing institutional abuse. It was the kind of move that ended careers, or lives, but she knew the clock was already ticking. Inside the prison, the kitchen reopened under enhanced supervision. New trays were served. Same suppliers. Same system. Then the final incident happened. An inmate collapsed during morning count. Not from a fight. Not from withdrawal. From acute organ failure. The medical staff worked in silence, knowing exactly what they were dealing with and how little they could say. This time, there was no denying the pattern. 3 inmates. 1 food chain. 1 cover-up too big to hide. Guards refused meals that day. Quietly at first, then openly. Some had families who ate dinner with them every night. Others had walked past those kitchens for years, trusting the system without question. Now they were staring at the same trays, wondering what had really been happening behind those stainless steel doors. When federal agents arrived, the prison went silent. Offices were sealed. Servers confiscated. Elias Mercer was escorted out in handcuffs, still wearing that same calm expression, as if this was all part of the plan. He never looked back at the cell blocks. The official report would later call it systemic failure. Budget pressure. Oversight gaps. Human error. But inmates knew the truth. Food had been used as control. As punishment. As a way to remind them how little their lives were worth once the gates closed. San Quentin's kitchens were shut down indefinitely. New policies were announced. New contracts promised transparency. But inside the cells, skepticism lingered. Because trust, once poisoned, doesn't recover easily. Mara stood outside the prison for the last time as the sun rose over the walls. The blue lights were gone now, replaced by something quieter, heavier. She'd exposed the truth, but she also knew this story didn't end here. Across the country, behind other walls, other kitchens were still running. And somewhere, another tray was being slid through another slot, carrying more than just a meal.